video, I want to talk about anxiety and racing thoughts. I'm sure if you're looking or listening to this video, it's something that you may have dealt with at some point in time in your life. I know I have had a very intimate relationship with anxiety and anxiety disorder. And so what I want to talk about in regards to having these overwhelming thoughts, and if you've ever gone through panic disorder or panic attacks, how there are some very positive ways to deal with this stress or this overwhelming sense of impending doom, and then how there are some toxic ways to deal with this kind of sort of destructive mental consciousness. So first of all, I just want to quickly define what I mean by overwhelming thoughts or racing thoughts, anxiety, or a panic attack. So when things are going good and you are emotionally stable and you can handle everything, and essentially you are at peace with your day, you're at peace with those around you, these aren't tools and techniques that matter to you in that moment. But when we're triggered at a level where essentially we are experiencing that fight or flight or just overwhelming sense of something not going right and this spinning out of control, it's a very deeply primal experience. It's essentially where your normally stable mind goes into a frenzy and acts as essentially like your worst enemy. So you start having all of these what if thoughts, what if this happens? What if I can't control my thoughts? What if I can't stabilize my behavior? What if I get overwhelmed and I jump off a bridge? These are very extreme thoughts, but it also tends to be those extreme thoughts that trigger our most deep-seated fears. So why am I bringing this up? Well, essentially, when we get into this thinking, this trail of thinking where we are being completely unrealistic, and when we are really, going off in left field with the way that we are processing reality, it brings up this natural, overwhelmed, anxious feeling. Sometimes we can have tightness of the chest, we can have sweaty palms, heart palpitations, feeling like we want to run away, feeling panic, needing to find a safe place or a safe person, not able to calm ourselves down in the moment. And this leads to greater fears about one's own safety and security. Now, some of these triggers can actually be mental patterns from our childhood. So if you have grown up in a destructive family environment, a really negative, angry or unstable childhood home, then anxiety might be something that is more common for you. But this can also really affect pretty much anybody in terms of one's mental view of the world. Okay, so now that we kind of understand what it is and how it feels, why does it start to crop up at the least inopportune time? So it always is going to kind of bubble up in your consciousness when you least desire it to happen. And of course, what comes in is the ego. What are people going to think about me? I'm having these maladaptive behaviors. How come I can't control myself? So what's happening on top of these very daunting feelings, we also have this mental construct of guilt. So we feel extremely guilty about what we're feeling and why we can't control ourselves. There's this idea that, as an adult or as even a young person, we should be able to control our own bodies and minds at the very least. If we can't control anything out in our external world, we should be by default able to control ourselves. But actually, that's often not the case. And it's not because there's anything wrong with us. It's because we have not learned the coping skills of how to create a peaceful and stable mind. So let's talk about some of the ways that this can affect us in a negative, toxic way. So, like any human being does, they try to problem solve. If you have this in your nature, if you are a nervous person, if you, again, come up or come across anxiety in your life, we we tend to grab for a problem-solving solution that is the quickest way to fix the suffering that we are going through in the moment. And so some of the things that will temporarily alleviate that mental strain are things like alcohol. So alcohol is a depressant, and it will calm the mind down, and it will create this buffer between the immediacy of the anxiety and what you are experiencing. And it hits the system pretty fast. So a lot of women, and actually a lot of men, because men historically haven't had the same outlets to be able to verbalize and communicate the things that they're going through as women traditionally have. So a lot of men out there often turn to things like alcohol to kind of a quick fix. And I apologize, I had to adjust my camera here. I'm actually in kind of a windy zone at the top of a mountain, so my cell phone blew over. But essentially, when we integrate these sort of maladaptive coping mechanisms to try to deal with what's going on in our head, we certainly don't start out doing it because we want to go down a toxic path. Everybody that, again, is trying to problem solve however they're capable of doing it, there's not really a malice intent behind it. It's just a very primal desire to alleviate that pain. So there are also other drugs that can be used to calm the mind down and take one out of the state of anxiety and that impending doom, and essentially push the consciousness into another state. Okay? And this is also, again, just a coping mechanism. Then we can move into the class of pharmaceutical drugs. So there is, a huge amount of pharmaceutical options for people that have stress disorders and anxiety disorders. And I'm not saying that these are bad options. Again, it's a way to cope with not having those foundational skills that can take the mind, the consciousness, when it is essentially running amok, and getting it back on track through the mechanism of your own will, intent, and consciousness. But the problem that often happens with pharmaceutical options is that they have a series of side effects that come with them. And some of these things can be lack of motivation, tiredness, a sort of low-level depression, sexual dysfunctions, and then they wear off over time. So you begin to build up a tolerance to them, and then essentially you need more and more medication and different types of medication to deal with all of the side effects that come along with whatever this quick fix is. So it's really important that you don't feel frustrated with yourself if you are going through this, that you don't feel like you're broken, that something's wrong with you. Usually, these things come up in somebody's life when they're extremely overwhelmed, or when environmental factors are pushing and squeezing an individual into an aspect of their living where they're not able to cope. And everybody at any given point in time on planet Earth is only ever doing the best that they know how to do in that moment. Okay, so this is, I'm coming from a place of really no judgment. That doesn't mean that when somebody is using these maladaptive coping mechanisms, that they are doing it because they want to be a terrible person. My family background, a lot of my friends have gone through very serious addictions, and I understand and I know that those individuals going through those addictions certainly feel a tremendous amount of guilt. At a deep core level, they also know that they are hurting those around them, but the pervasive energy of overwhelm is so strong that even though they realize that they're hurting those around them, they just simply cannot control their mind-body connection, and it puts them into a zone where they feel so uncomfortable that they end up doing these strange things to self-medicate. You know, most addictions actually are combined with what we call a dual diagnosis. So this is essentially where the person has underlying conscious behavioral patterns and mental health irregularities that are really have never been attended to, so they are self-medicating. Now, I have studied psychology in university, abnormal psych, everything like that. I also have a lot of friends and family members that have dealt with, you know, very severe mental illness as well as addictions. And, you know, I really don't like putting anybody into a box and saying that, you know, there's this group of people that are bipolar, this group of people that are schizophrenic. I mean, when we're dealing with, you know, really when we're dealing with, you know, mass groups of people, sometimes it's important to compartmentalize them, because it's just too many people to try to figure out what's going on with each individual person. But the beauty of when we start to take care of ourselves and we look at self-care, we can really dig deep into what's going on with our own consciousness, take ourselves out of these collective boxes, and really understand how nature versus nurture, how our actual genetics play into how we deal with situations. And this is such a powerful thing that really puts your own life's trajectory back in your own hands. This means doing your own research. This means really cultivating that attitude of learning and self-discovery. And when we do this, we can start to navigate some really powerful tools that will help us create balance on our own. Okay, and I've been through this journey, and one of the most important things that I've learned in this journey are very, very simple tools. So first of all, if you are extremely overwhelmed, if you are in a state where you're having a panic attack, just coming back to breathing. And I know that this sounds like it doesn't work, but you have to have a certain type of breath. So you're going to take a really big breath in, really, really deep, as much as you can fill your lungs. And then at that point, you're going to take another breath on top of it. So you're going to force more oxygen into your lungs. You're going to hold that for about 5 to 7 seconds. And then you're slowly going to deep breathe out. Okay. We don't want to get into a situation where we're hyperventilating. We're just doing this slow and steady breath work. Okay. So let's say you're driving in a car, you're on an airplane. Again, just going back to centralizing yourself with your breath. Now from there, okay, one thing that I love to do if I have the ability to take action is to distract the mind. So taking my mind off of how I'm feeling and doing another activity. This is a perfect example of this. Is I actually had this sensation before making this video. I was extremely overwhelmed. I found myself kind of heading towards a panic attack. So I sat myself down and used my own productive tools to get myself out of that energy. And of course, what am I doing now? I am doing an action. I'm actually utilizing my mind, calming it down, and going through the motions. So I sat down, I did my deep breaths, and then I set something up to do an activity. Okay, activity will distract the brain. So a lot of times, and especially in my past, I would do things like go and get into bed and try to quiet my mind that way. But what that led to was simply just more and more racing thoughts, because now I'm in bed and my mind is spinning. So this kind of takes me back to actionable steps that will put you in a zone to feel like yourself again. I've got stuff blowing around all over here. Sorry about that. And it's, you know, these are really, really simple steps. We covered the deep breathing, and we've covered distracting yourself by taking some action. Another few points that I want to bring up is simple things like it actually might be the chemistry within your body. So oftentimes I will have a light snack just to ensure that it's not something with my blood sugar and that is not affecting my emotional state. So in terms of eating, you always want to eat a protein and a sugar together. Don't grab something super sugary because that's going to spike your insulin and it's going to give you more of an unstable emotional state. So making sure that you have like a piece of cheese with an apple is a great way to just kind of curb that blood sugar if that could be one of the reasons why you're going into this sort of emotional instability. Another thing could be hydration, okay? A lot of times when we're busy in the modern world, we forget to drink. So that's the other thing I'm gonna do. I'm going to have a big glass of water. Now let's talk about travel. How do we do these things when we're in transit, when we're on a plane? I always carry some sort of a protein bar, nuts, seeds, and some dried fruit in my purse and some sort of a water bottle so that I have those things ready to go if I run into this circumstance while I'm traveling. If you're in a car, if you're on a plane, and you're not able to move too much, if you're in a car, usually you can pull over and do these things, go through your phones, maybe check a few emails just to distract yourself. If you're on a plane, the same thing. You can also sit in your seat and do some exercises while you're there, or distract yourself with a movie or something where you're taking your brain out of the immediate situation. Okay, so those are two other really, really helpful things that you can do to check in with your body and see if that might be part of the reason that you're feeling this spike of emotional instability. Last two things I want to talk about are creating a new mental construct of love, gratitude, and reaching out to those that you love. So I often find this puts me into a really positive mental space if I am sort of going off the tracks in terms of the way that I'm thinking. So first of all, again, really anywhere, while you're driving, while you're on a plane, if you're in your house, if you are at work, you can pop in headphones for a few minutes and just listen to something that is inspirational and peaceful. So any kind of meditative music, and you're gonna check in with what works for you. Some people, if there's a voice involved, then they actually get more anxiety ridden, and so just some calm tones are better in terms of that equilibrium of the consciousness. Some people really like a calm voice that's going to walk them through what they're going through, in addition to some really nice soothing music behind that voice. Okay, the other thing that I love to do is write letters of gratitude. So if I'm feeling really in a zone of anxiety, I sit down and I will write to all of the people that have affected my life in a positive way. What this does is it reminds me to check in with those that I love. It reminds me how grateful I am for the life that I have and the incredible people that are in my life. And it grounds me in a way that brings me back to reality, sets me back on a good course in terms of my own mental thought patterning. I'm not going to make this video too much longer, but I really want you to understand that if you are struggling with anxiety, that it is a real thing and it is really an overwhelming thing, and it takes time to learn these skills. Practice makes perfect. It took me many, many years out of my teenage years into early adulthood to try to cultivate positive ways to handle my own brain. The human suit that we're born with doesn't come with an instruction manual. So we have to do this self-discovery and the self-learning to figure out ways and coping skills so that we can live our most beautiful, vibrant, and peaceful existence. The other thing I would say is if you are in the binds of, toxic behavioral patterns when dealing with your own mind, to give yourself a break, but really understand that the trajectory of your entire life is based on how you think and feel and how you cope with that on a daily basis. So investing that time to really unravel whatever negative coping behaviors that you've picked up along the way, it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you an ineffective person. What it means is that you have a little bit more of an extended leg to your race, that you're going to have to push and move through. But understand that even that is a gift, because what that's also going to cultivate within you is a lot of compassion and kindness for others that are also dealing with similar difficulties. So remember, each and every day is a gift. Each and every moment that you put forward thinking and forward momentum into making yourself a better person, you actually make the world a better place to be in. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.